What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and I am actually excited for this video because I think it's going to be a ton of fun. We're going to be looking at really one of the hottest cards to come out here in the Pokemon space in recent memory, and that's the Greninja from Twilight Masquerade, right? I mean, the card is absolutely on fire. It has come out, and I mean, it's over $300 as I sit here and shoot this video, so it has all of the makings of one of the greatest cards in recent memory. Now, what we're going to do in this video is we're going to compare it from a data perspective, like black and white, trying to take all the thoughts and feelings out of it, but we're going to compare it to what we know to be the greatest card from the Sword and Shield block, and that is obviously the Moonbreon, right? That comes from Evolving Skies. Evolving Skies was the biggest set in the Sword and Shield block, and we all know the Sword and Shield block as a whole is absolutely amazing with the alt arts, the trainer galleries. You know, it brought a lot of people back to the hobby because it was in the middle of the pandemic. I just think the Sword and Shield era as a whole is going to hold a lot of special memories for people, not just now, but long into the future. As a matter of fact, I did a video one time where I said even people who have dropped out of the hobby after the pandemic, I think if they eventually make their way back, which some will in the future, they're going to have a high priority on getting some of these cards because they'll remember it, and it's going to bring back memories from when they were stuck in their house and they were collecting Pokemon. So I think Sword and Shield has a very bright future ahead of it. But as much as this is about the Moonbreon, this video is equally going to be about the Greninja right there. And as I said in the title of this video, listen, I truly think that the market is valuing this Greninja at Umbreon levels. Now, it will be up for you guys to decide. Matter of fact, I would love it if you tell me in the comments down below, what do you think? Wait till the end of the video, take all the data in, get all the information before you respond, but let me know, is the Greninja the next Moonbreon? Is it going to be the big chase card from the Scarlet and Violet set, or is people going nuts? Is it just too overvalued right now? We don't know enough information. We will have to see. And you know what? While you're dropping that in the comments down below, if you enjoy this type of data approach and you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button, join the community. We've got a great group. I would love for you to be a part of it. And if you think this is fun, hit the thumbs up button. I got a small channel. Those 3 small things go a long way in helping me out, and I really appreciate it. And like I said, I'm not going to tell you my thoughts or opinions because that doesn't matter. The whole point of this channel is to be a data-driven, fact-based approach, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay everything out on the table for you. We're going to look at all kinds of gem rates and populations, and we're going to look at prices now and prices then, and I think it's going to be a really fun walk to compare these two cards. So let's get into it right now. Now, the first thing that I thought would be really cool to look at is the gem rate for each of these cards. Now, I know that the Greninja is relatively new. Obviously, we're coming up on the 3-month mark, but when I went to PSA's website, there has been 1,200 of the cards that have been submitted. So to me, that is a big enough sample size to at least give us some directional idea as to where the gem rate is going to end up. And as I said, there's been 1,207 of them submitted to PSA, and 817 of them have been awarded a PSA 10 gem mint. And that translates into a 68% gem rate. That number will fluctuate. It could go up, it could come down, but I feel very confident we're going to end up in the mid to high 60s. So I feel very confident in that range since we have had 1,200 that have been sent through. Now, when you compare it to the Moonbreon, obviously we have substantially more of them that have been sent through, right? There has been over 16,700 of them sent to PSA for grading, but guess what? 12,600 of them have been awarded a PSA 10 gem mint grade. That is a 75% gem rate. That is a really, really high gem rate when you compare these two. I think the Moonbreon is going to end up with a higher gem rate than the Greninja. And now you got to take that with a grain of salt. I say this all the time, like gem rate and overall population is only one part of the equation. That is the supply side. The demand side is what's even more important. Obviously, we know that there is crazy high demand for the Moonbreon. So even though there's almost 13,000 PSA 10s out there, guess what? They're still selling for over $1,200 a pop. This is a fantastic example of a special card from a special set in an amazing era that where the population, at least right now, doesn't seem to have a huge effect on the price because it's still selling for such a high valuation. I thought it'd also be cool, while we're talking about gem rates from Sword and Shield, is to look at what I consider the other two big chase cards from the Sword and Shield block. So if you think about the Gengar from Fusion Strike, that had a gem rate of 62%. So I think that the Gengar's gem rate and the Greninja's gem rate are going to be relatively close. I think they will be very, very similar. However, when you think about the Giratina from Lost Origin, that had one of the worst gem rates of all of the alt arts from the Sword and Shield block, all the way down at 48%. So that card is at about a 20% lower gem rate than the Greninja. I thought that was really interesting. And then while we were at it, I said, well, let's look at some of these Scarlet and Violet cards as well. Let's look at some of the Scarlet and Violet cards from what I consider to be some of the bigger sets here in the Scarlet and Violet block. And of course, that's going to be Paldea Evolved and Pokemon 151. Now, again, I'm not telling you all anything you don't know, so hopefully we're just showing numbers to validate it, but Paldea Evolved in 151 did not have great print quality, especially Paldea Evolved. When you look at the chase card from that set, that Magikarp, there have been 4,384 of them sent to PSA for grading, and only 1,012 of them ended up with a 10. That is a 23% gem rate. That is just abysmally low for a big chase card from an ultra modern set like this. And then, I mean, the bloodbath continues. If you look at the Tyranitar, if you look at the Raichu, I mean, the Tyranitar is at 18%, the Raichu's at 21%. Like, it is just incredible how bad the print quality was there in Paldea Evolved. Now, 151 is obviously, in my mind, the other big set from this era. And when we look at the Charizard, that's the big chase card from 151, there has been 18,400 of them submitted to PSA for grading. And mind you, we've got another restock coming up here in the near future. 7,162 of them have been given a PSA 10 for a 38.8% gem rate. Right now, that is 30 percentage points lower than the Greninja. Interesting. I don't know. We'll just have to see, but that is incredibly interesting to see that gem rate for 151, right? Next, you look at the Blastoise, then you look at the Venusaur, and again, the gem rate remains directionally the same. You get 40% and 41% there. And I did include the Charizard from Obsidian Flames, and it's not because it's a huge chase card, and it's certainly not because Obsidian Flames is a huge set from this era, but I did find it interesting that that is a decent card. I think it's pretty. I actually love it a whole lot. I've got one in a PSA 10. I got one in a PSA 9. I sent two through. I got a 10 and a 9, but it only has a 29% gem rate. So for me, when I'm thinking about it in the long term, I think it does have some opportunity for some growth. And again, there in the very bottom in the yellow, I have highlighted the Greninja gem rate. So when you look at that across all the Scarlet and Violet era, all of these other cards have incredibly low gem rates. And now we have the Greninja up at a 67.7 or a 68% gem rate. Again, just as I said, gem rate and population is not the end all be all. The Umbreon has proven that, but it is something worth taking note of as we look at this Greninja and as we think about its place, here in the Scarlet and Violet block moving forward. Next thing right here, we are going through a walk of the Umbreon's life cycle in terms of price. This was a ton of fun for me to pull up, and this was a ton of fun for me to learn. I thought this was fascinating just to see how this card's price has performed ever since it came out. So if you look on August 27th, the world was blessed with Evolving Skies, and this Moonbreon card came out at a starting price of $346. Then, back then, we don't see it as much in the Scarlet and Violet block. It went through what I used to call the Pokemon pop and flop, where it starts off really high. As more product is opened, as more of these hit the market, the price starts to come back down. It just makes sense, right? So then in November, 3 months later, in November on the 27th, it was valued at $173, right? That is a pretty big drop. It's actually a 50% drop from where the card started. 3 months later, so now we're 6 months into the life cycle of Evolving Skies, this card has rebounded from where it was in February, but is still way below that starting price. It's up at $238, but again, it's still down 31% versus where it started. 3 months later, when we get to May, it's creeping its way up still. It's at $316, still below where it started at. And finally, at the 1 year mark on August 27th, 1 year after the set came out, the raw card for this Moonbreon right here was directionally flat to where it started off, right? It's at $324 now versus where it came out at $346. So it is actually still $20 cheaper versus when it came out, but at least we're in the same ballpark. And then you can see I stopped looking at it in 3 month intervals and I started looking at it in 6 months intervals, and you'll see from August 27th, 6 months later, it's all the way up to $467, right? 6 months later, it's all the way up to $528, right? 6 months later, it's pretty much flat at $538, and then it just spiked and went crazy here as of late, and it's been working its way back down ever since. But this is a very interesting life cycle from a price perspective for what all of us identified pretty early on as the big set, the big chase card from the Sword and Shield era. So again, look at how this one performed. It started off at $340, went through the Pokemon pop and flop, and it took a whole year to get right back up to that $340 mark. Really interesting takeaway. So of course I had to say, What'd the Greninja do? Now the graph isn't as long because the Greninja's brand new, but this one did kind of the opposite. There was no Pokemon pop and flop in the first 3 months. This one started off on May 24th and the starting price was $152. 3 months later, on August 14th, or close to 3 months later, on August 14th, it was all the way up to $261. Now I do use this information from Pokedata.io for this slide and the previous one simply because it includes all eBay prices, and I really like having eBay prices when I'm looking at stuff like this. I know on TCG Player as I shoot this, the Greninja is valued at $300, but again, this includes eBay sales, and I think that's really good when we're talking about brand new cards. So again, opening price of $152, currently at $261. That is a 72% growth in the first 3 months versus in the first 3 months of the Moonbreon card, it was actually down 50%. So really interesting takeaway about how these two beautiful, amazing, awesome Pokemon cards have performed fundamentally different, at least in the first 3 months. Now, of course, we got to take it to the next level because that's what we do on this channel. So besides looking at that, I said, let's look at PSA 10 sales. Let's just have an idea. Since we're at the 3-month mark for the Greninja, and there is 800 and something PSA 10s in the population, let's take a look at what the PSA 10s are selling for. So I clipped the 5 most recent PSA 10 sales on eBay, and here they are on the screen right here. And then what I did was I averaged it out. So the average for the last 5 PSA 10s that have sold on eBay for the Greninja from Twilight Masquerade is $553. That is a very strong price. But what was interesting to me is the gap between that price and the raw card. I mean, we're talking about a $250 gap. It sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but you know I'm going to compare to the Moonbreon, as I'm doing right here. And it's fascinating because the gap in the Moonbreon's raw card price at 3 months, which remember was about $170, versus the price for the PSA 10s at the 3-month mark, which you'll see right here, is much larger. So here, the 5 Umbreons, you can see the dates on the far right? I went all the way back to November of 2021 and I pulled this information from eBay. These were 5 sales of the Moonbreon in a PSA 10 holder all the way back in November of 2021. And I averaged them out, and the average price for those 5 sales was $565 at month number 3. Now at month number 3 for the Greninja, where we are right now, it's $553. So again, they are almost identical. It is so incredibly fascinating to me to see that the PSA 10 prices for the Umbreon at this point and the PSA 10 prices for the Greninja at this point are so incredibly close. It is just fascinating. The biggest difference between the two, obviously, is the raw card prices. The Greninja raw card is all the way up and, you know, close to the $300 mark, and at this point the raw card for the Moonbreon was only $174. So a huge gap in terms of PSA 10 versus raw card price between the two cards. That's pretty much the biggest difference I saw as I was building this whole video out. So with all of that being said, listen, I'm not going to tell you if you should buy the Greninja. I'm not going to tell you if you shouldn't. I'm not going to tell you if you have it, you should sell it. Like, that is not what I do on this channel. I just thought this would be really interesting to compare these two cards. Is the Greninja going to be the Moonbreon of the Scarlet and Violet block? I don't know. You know, you think about it, we have some great sets that are coming up in the future, but guess what? Like, when Evolving Skies came out, we had some great sets that were coming out in the future of Sword and Shield as well. Like, there was no way to know, there was no way to anticipate that there were not better sets or better cards that were coming out in the future. I think, at least for me, in the back of my mind, I keep thinking, I'm like, man, there's got to be a better card, there's got to be a bigger chase, there's got to be something coming up ahead. But guess what? In Evolving Skies, after Evolving Skies, there wasn't. Like, there wasn't. There were some great sets and some fantastic cards, but there was no other Moonbreon. So the Greninja very well could be the Moonbreon of the Scarlet and Violet era. I have no idea, but I do think it was a ton of fun to look at the comparisons. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found value in it. And if you enjoyed it and found value in it and you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, hit that subscribe button. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a big old thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great one, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.